This is H.D. Ingles. I have a few books on Amazon, both Kindle and paperback. Oh yes, also Kindle Unlimited. One book, The 40s and the 50s, is a collection of stories about my family and growing up in Huntington, West Virginia. I chose the story, A Bevy of Broads, to podcast. Don't get excited. It's about an innocent lad growing up with 6 older sisters. Here goes. A Bevy of Broads. Author's note. I do love my sisters, all 6 of them. They're really not so bad. After all, they have learned to live with and tolerate, I think, my sense of humor. I'll repeat it. I love my sisters. They are probably the nicest, sweetest 6 women who ever lived. I was obliged to say that for self-protection. They may be getting old, but all of them are still as mean as snakes. One more thing. The title of this story may offend some modern women. I didn't mean any offense. But if it makes you feel any better, just think of the title as A Bunch of Broads. I warn you, though, if you do that, it will give the story even less meaning than it already has. Mama and Daddy raised 6 girls. If you have been paying any attention at all so far, you already know that. Anyway, I don't know how they did it. That's a lot to put up with. In the early days, I don't believe that it was a terrible financial burden. There's probably more than one reason for that. As I believe I've already told you, in those days, Daddy wasn't rich or anything such as that, but I think he made enough to pay for rent, buy the groceries, and have some left over. That part started changing sometime after 1930. It started getting bad then. Things were tough all the way around. I think another reason may be that large families were much more common in those days. Things were just different. People had different values. Men went out and worked. Women stayed home and worked. Families didn't require an automobile for every member and 3 vacations a year. To give you an idea of how different things were and how they were beginning to change even by the time I came along, I was the only one of 7 born in a hospital. All 6 of my sisters were born at home. Anyway, I still don't see how Mom and Daddy did it. I don't see how I did it. You know how bossy women are. Can you imagine what a poor, innocent, need I say darling, young boy such as I had to put up with? Before I continue, let me say that in those days, most people had only one bathroom in their homes. So you didn't go to a bathroom, you went to the bathroom. Anyway, when it comes down to the bathroom, I was last in line. And when I was lucky enough to get in, it was like walking through a maze. Slips, stockings, and various female undergarments strung everywhere. I guess Daddy got used to it. I didn't have enough sense to learn from history. To show you how smart I was, I raised 2 girls. Did you know that teenage girls wash their hair approximately 14 times a day? In 1976, I took my wife and 2 daughters on a 3-week vacation. It's the only time I've ever taken a vacation that long. We went to Florida. Worked out right well. Winona, dear sweet Winona, and Jim, her husband, met us in Alabama and took the girls. The girls thought it was great. Jim thought it was great. My wife and I weren't at all unhappy. I don't know about Winona. Anyway, Winona and Jim have no children, so Jim liked it because he could stop at all the alligator farms and snake acts and things like that. He had always wanted to do it, but he never had an excuse before. Lisa and Laura filled the bill. By the way, in case you're wondering why a family who lives in Central Carolina drove to Florida via Alabama, the reason is quite simple. We sort of meandered. I like to meander. Well, we did happen to stop in Atlanta to see the Big Red Machine massacre the Braves. While we were there, Lisa got the autograph of Johnny Bench, her current hero. Oh yes, we also stopped in Birmingham to see my wife's brother and family. Anyway, what all this is boiling down to is the fact that Carolyn and I actually had a good part of our vacation without children. I didn't have to go to any alligator farms. I don't know about now, but 15 years ago, most of the restaurants in Florida advertised that breakfast was served with a rasher of bacon. Sounded like a huge breakfast to me. I figured the rasher had to be at least a half pound of bacon, maybe a pound. It's sometimes 3 slices, most times 2. Well, one morning, after having our rasher of bacon, I looked at Carolyn and said, "A rasher of bacon." She said, "A flock of sheep." I said, "A covey of quail." It went on like that. You get the idea. Anyway, as I was writing this, I thought about that conversation, and that's how I came up with the title of this story. As I was telling you, I was raised with 6 older sisters. When they were younger, Mama had to go down the list to get the right name when she was calling for them. Grace Jean was easy. Mama just yelled out, "Grace Jean." Winona wasn't so bad. Grace Jean Winona. Then there was Irene. Grace Jean, Winona, Mary Marjorie, Margaret, Irene. Actually, it was more of an Irene. When Irene was born, Daddy told Mama that if he couldn't have a boy, he would have a 3-eyed Ingles. My youngest sister is Irene Isabel Ingles. Daddy didn't like nicknames. He always called me either Son or David. I don't think ever once did he say Dave. All of my sisters had nicknames too. That was fine, but Daddy never used them. It's funny, but as I've gotten older, I've fallen away from using my sisters' nicknames, and more often than not, use their given names. For this story, I use the nicknames because that's the way it was when I was a little boy. Grace Jean is AC, Winona is Noni, Mary Marjorie is Emmy. She was also tagged with M and MM, but I'll stick with Emmy, as that was my name for her then. Margaret is Marg, Virginia is Jenny. Last but not least, Irene is Izzy. Later tagged with just Iz, but as a little boy, I called her Izzy. In many ways, my sisters have quite a bit in common. Phrases such as bullheaded, hard-headed, and downright ornery come to mind. And to be honest, none of them were really bad-looking. Please don't tell any of them that I said that. They have differences, too. I think that part of the differences has to do with where they fit into the family, the order of birth, that is. AC, Noni, and Emmy are all natural-born leaders. If you don't believe me, ask them. If you ever feel a need to be told exactly what to do and exactly what you've been doing wrong, give Emmy a call. Given an opportunity, note here that Emmy would consider the call itself a more than adequate opportunity. She will first tell you how to organize your paperclip box. She will then rapidly work her way up to the organization of your closet, stopping only briefly before a total reorganization of your entire home and general living habits. One time, when I was about 11 years old, we moved again. We moved from a house to an apartment. Emmy had left to go out of town by then, but we were lucky enough to have her there to organize the move. As I think on it, she may have been there for a while. She went back to college and lived at home for a period. I don't remember for sure. It's difficult to keep up with 6 of them. The truth is, it's difficult to keep up with 1 of them. Anyway, we were organizing a little room that was off to the side of the apartment. It was a very small room. The word teeny comes to mind. Small rooms only need so much organization. That is, unless you have Emmy there. We would organize. Then we would organize some more. Keep in mind here that the word that you should translate organize to move furniture. There were 2 chairs and a 2-seat couch that had to go in that teeny little room. In a room that's that size, there were only just so many combinations. We tried them all. Just to be sure, we tried some combinations over and over and over again. If I remember correctly, Emmy had Marg. Marg was married by then and living elsewhere in Huntington. And me, moving that stupid couch and those stupid chairs all over that stupid little room. Emmy actually didn't do any lifting herself. She was too busy supervising and organizing. Neither Marg nor I were competent enough to put 2 chairs and a couch in a small room. I was only 11 years old, and after a while, I'd organized enough. Enough is enough, even if you were only 11. I was standing there holding up one end of a couch. Things needed more organization. Move it a little forward. I moved it forward a little. Move it back a little. I moved it back a little. Move it forward just a teeny bit. I moved it forward just a teeny bit. I was getting fed up. Stop! I stopped. I know the problem. I knew the problem. So did Marg. It's all wrong. All wrong. We need to move those chairs into the other room for a minute. Then we can put the couch on the other side of the room. Then we can move the chairs back in where the couch is now. Marg was just standing there. She was starting to turn a little purple. That's a bad sign. Marg could punch Emmy out. I was standing there holding up half a couch. Emmy was standing there organizing. She was planning a total reorganization of the room again. I don't know where I got the strength, but I slung my half of the couch about 3 feet. You move the blankety-blank couch. I went out and played baseball. Marg isn't exactly a wimp. I don't know what else went on, but when I returned, the couch was on the side of the room where I had left it. It stayed there until we moved again. After I was married, I borrowed a car, and Carolyn and I drove up to Ohio to see Marg, Jack, and Dickie Lee, husband and daughter. On our first evening, Marg made supper. We had steaks. She broiled them in the oven. Nothing unusual so far. Let me continue. Recently, there was a television show, I never saw it, about a guy who is real fast. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know how fast that guy is, but Marg is faster. Marg doesn't even need to jump into a telephone booth or whatever to change clothes. My wife couldn't believe it. Anyway, Marg took the steaks ready to serve out of the broiler. She said, "Oh my gosh." "Oh my gosh, what?" Carolyn speaking. "I forgot the fruit salad. It's too late now." Carolyn again. "No, it's not. No person on this earth can explain how Marg got that fruit salad made. She took out a little paring knife. All I can say is zip, 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 zip. Watching her was sort of like watching a high-speed peeling machine. Before the steaks had even thought about getting cold, Marg had a fruit salad. One more thing. The grapes were seeded and peeled. Carolyn couldn't believe it. She started thinking about seeing if she could get Marg on a spot on the Ed Sullivan Show. Marg used to scare me when I was a little guy, and we lived on 21st Street. She did pretty good monster stuff. She would chase me on the porch and then out into the yard. "Stop, stop, I'm scared." She would stop. "Do it again, Marg." I remember things like that with great fondness.